It's already been a very big year for hot hatches with the arrival of the long-awaited Toyota GR Corolla and the hotly anticipated new generation Honda Civic Type R, but this could be the real game changer. It's the all-new, all-electric MG4 XPower. It's got the most power of any of its competitors, and it's the fastest accelerating in its class. But big deal, all EVs are fast in a straight line. No. For this to impress us, it's got to do it in the corners. But before we get driving, let's start by taking a look at the price and features of the XPower. And there's another headline-grabbing figure here, but in a good way. That's because in an era when hot hatches are getting astronomically expensive, the aforementioned Honda now costing north of 70 grand, well, this one starts at $59,990, which not only makes it reasonably priced, but arguably makes this one of the first electric vehicles to truly achieve price parity with its petrol-powered competition. For that price, you get the dual-motor powertrain and a raft of performance upgrades, plus 18-inch alloy wheels, a fairly comprehensive safety package we'll detail later, plus a 6-speaker sound system, Bluetooth, navigation, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, wireless smartphone charging, and faux leather and Alcantara trim. Now, as always, if you want more detailed, in-depth analysis of the MG4 XPower, make sure you check out my full written review at carsguide.com.au. Now, moving on to design, the XPower takes the already aerodynamically honed shape of the MG4 and adds a few sporty embellishments. It's a little bit more aggressive around the front end. You've got this, it's a graphical sort of design element on the side there. It's not really adding any performance. And you have got this little double twin spoiler there on the rear here, but again, that's a standard feature on other models in the MG4 range. So it's not exactly, overtly different in terms of how it appears to the rest of the MG4 lineup. One thing you will notice though are these, well, obviously you've got this green color, which is unique to the XPower and inspired by a former Sterling Moss racing car. And this turkey is freaking me out. What are you doing? Go away. You're ruining the shot now. You've ruined the shot. Racing car from MG's glory days, back when it was a British sports car brand. The other thing you will notice are these giant brake calipers, which actually aren't giant brake calipers. The orange element is actually a cover for what is pretty standard braking hardware. Obviously, you're doing a lot of regen braking with an electric vehicle, so you don't actually need enormous brakes, but MG felt the need to fit enormous caliper covers just to give you a bit more of a sporty flair. Jumping inside, let's take a look at how practical the XPower is, because that is a key requirement of a hot hatch. Unlike a two-door sports car, hot hatches are the kind of things you should be able to drive every day if you need to, so they need to have a very practical element. The first thing that jumps out at you though is this does not feel like a 60 grand car. It's not exactly opulent or luxurious, but it does have the key features you need. You've got a 7-inch digital dashboard over here, you've got a 10-inch infotainment screen, you've got a wireless charging pad, and you've got some really handy storage spaces, a large lidded console box down here, a couple of cup holders, and the seats are finished in sort of a dual leather and suede effect. So, it's not exactly, it doesn't feel cheap, but it doesn't scream a $60,000 car. There are a few little bugbears though, like this infotainment screen. I've noticed it's a little complicated to get around. You've got only a handful of physical buttons, and you're missing things like, air conditioning, temperature up and down, or fan speed are not there. There's only the demisters and volume for the stereo. The steering wheel controls itself, this has got a lot of functionality on it, but not particularly well labeled, so it will take you a little while to get familiar with all the functions of the car. And the charging pad, whilst it's great that it has a charging pad, and it's nice and high up here, so you can access your phone easily when you're jumping in and out of the car. It's basically a ledge that your phone flies out of as soon as you turn around a corner with any sort of effort. So not ideal for a hot hatch. The last thing you want is your mobile phone sliding under the brake pedal. In the back here, as you can see, there isn't a load of space. This is actually though behind my own driving position, and I'm about 6 foot, 180 centimeters tall, and I like to sit, reasonably far back. It's a little cramped. with the seat move forward, there's adequate space. Obviously being an EV, it's a flat floor, so there's respectable room back here. Again though, it does have a relatively Spartan vibe. You've got a USB charging outlet, but there's no air conditioning vents, which seems like a pretty big oversight on a $60,000 car, and not particularly good as we're coming into an Australian summer. Seat trims though, nice, you know, they're comfortable, you know, comfortable seats in the same trim. And you have got, there's like these little handy pockets, like there's a couple of little handy pockets on the back here where you can pop your phone or whatnot. So again, it's a little bit of a mixed bag where there are some nice elements. Clearly MG's done a good job of trying to, you know, add some sportiness, but overall, just some of those key features that you would want in any car, let alone a $60,000 car, are missing. As for the boot, well, it's actually, I mean, it's not the biggest in class at 363 litres on the measuring tape, but drop the back seat to get over 1,000. It's a fairly practical sort of size, so it's a decent boot for a hot hatch. One minus quibble is this lovely number. It's a fairly compact case for your charging cable, but despite the fact this is a bespoke electric vehicle, it's designed to have a charging cable, there's nowhere to put it in the back. It just sort of slides around loose in the boot if you let it, which seems like a bit of an oversight. Motivation for the XPower comes from dual electric motors. There's one on each axle, giving a combined output of 320 kilowatts and 600 newton meters. So it has got serious all-wheel drive performance. It'll launch 0 to 100 in 3.8 seconds, which actually makes it the equal fastest accelerating hot hatch on the market today with the Audi RS3. So it is a seriously fast car.
The XPower is fitted with a 64 kilowatt hour battery, which the company claims is enough for 400 kilometers of driving range on the WLTP cycle. It has 140 kilowatt DC charging capability, so with the right equipment, you can replenish the batteries from 10 to 80% in just 30 minutes.
But let's get to the crux of the matter, which is how the MG4 XPower handles itself when the going gets twisty. Well, for starters though, before we get to that, I've got to talk to you about the way this MG4 turns on. Like so many modern EVs, it doesn't have a starter button. It's just you hop in and the car switches itself on, which is fine in theory, but this one particularly, for some reason, it just takes a little while to get going. You know, it takes a minute for its brain to wake up before you can even select a gear. So it's a little finicky. Again, it's one of those things you'll get used to over time, but it just feels like it could be a smoother operation. Now let's get to the heart of the matter, how it drives and how it handles itself on a twisty piece of road. Now, first things first, yes. Put your foot down and it goes. You know, with over 600 newton meters of torque, that's a heck of a lot of pulling power. It hauls in a straight line. It is a very, very quick car. But the handling, this is the real question. And this is this is a very familiar piece of road for me. I've driven a lot of hot hatches on this piece of road. And to be blunt, this does not feel like the most exciting hot hatch I've ever driven on this piece of road. It does a good job, don't get me wrong. You dial up sports mode in the menu here, the steering gets a bit heavier, the powertrain feels a bit more responsive, but it doesn't feel engaging, exciting, you know, that emotional element. Not even the sound. I'm not just saying because it doesn't make any noise, I don't feel emotional about it. There's just not that connection. It just doesn't quite have that same handling characteristic that you get in, you know, the truly great hot hatches these days, like the Civic Type R, like the GR Corolla, like the Hyundai i30N. Those are just something a bit special. This feels quick. It feels like a quick electric car. You know, I've driven the Tesla Model 3 Performance on this road, and you wouldn't necessarily call that a overt sports sedan. You know, this is not quite that engaging. I've driven the Porsche Taycan on the same stretch of road, and I enjoy that car. That does have, you know, some excitement factor about it. So I don't think that is restricted to because this is an electric car, it's not fun. I think electric cars can be fun, they can be exciting, but I think MG has just missed the mark with this one ever so slightly. You know, it's not the kind of car you're bust into take to a racetrack like you are, say, a Civic Type R or a GR Corolla. It's a very quick car, it's a very competent car, but it's just not a very, you know, emotional car. It doesn't capture that excitement and that, you know, that wow factor that you really want in a great hot hatch.
In terms of safety, as mentioned earlier, there's a fairly comprehensive list of equipment. Beyond the passive 6 airbags and required stability controls, anti-lock brakes and the like, the XPower comes equipped with the MG Pilot suite of active safety features as standard. These include autonomous emergency braking, lane keeping assist, lane departure warning, adaptive cruise control, blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert. Thanks to all this safety gear, the MG4 range was awarded a 5-star ANCAP crash test rating when it was tested in 2022. Now, to keep up to date, or if you want more details on the safety features of the MG4, make sure you check out our detailed reviews at carsguide.com.au. As for its ownership credentials, the XPower is covered by MG's 7-year unlimited kilometre warranty like the rest of the range. The servicing intervals are also the same as the rest of the MG4 lineup, which means a lengthy 2 years or 40,000 kilometres, whichever comes first, between visits to the dealership. That's much longer than your typical internal combustion hot hatch. The cost of servicing is slightly higher though for the XPower compared to the rest of the MG4 range. A minor service is the same $296, but a major service, which comes every second service, will cost you $962. But even so, for the first 6 years, you'll only be up for $1,554 in servicing costs, which is comparatively cheap amongst its hot hatch competition.
So what's the verdict on the MG4 XPower? Well, as expected, it's got plenty of punch in a straight line. It's a very, very quick car. And it hangs on surprisingly well in the corners. It does a good job, but it does lack that emotional engagement that you really want in a hot hatch. So it's maybe falls short of that game changer tag. And it also underlines a point we've found with the rest of the MG4 range, which is the cheaper it gets, the better it feels. And remember, if you want any more information on the MG4 XPower, any model in the MG range, make sure you check out our in-depth written reviews at carsguide.com.au.